Honorable Minister, President of the International Energy Agency, Dr. Fatih Birol, Founding Chair of the Board of Trustees of Sabancı University, Ms. Güler Sabancı, Esteemed Rector Professor Yusuf Leblebici, distinguished ambassadors, and valued participants. Welcome to IICEC's annual conference, now in its 18th edition. The energy world is undergoing a rapid transformation both globally and regionally, and this transformation brings not only risks but also opportunities. And while geopolitical developments and the dynamics of transition towards sustainability increase uncertainties, the progress achieved in renewable energy technologies and digitalization also presents significant opportunities for the industry. So in this context, our conference today is going to address the current state of Turkey's and the global energy markets, the challenges we face, and the opportunities ahead. Sabancı University, for 25 years, has been making a difference in its pioneering role in higher education and ranks among the top universities in Turkey in Times Higher Education rankings. So this success is a reflection of our commitment to scientific excellence and contribution to society. And in line with this vision, we, 15 years ago, launched the Sabancı University Istanbul International Center for Energy and Climate, IICEC, as a strategic center for energy and climate. So through the success triangle model specifically emphasized by Ms. Güler Sabancı, IICEC, with its analytical studies and high-quality events, continue to contribute to energy and climate policy, bringing together the public sector, private sector, and academia, and we feel the growing impact every day. So we would like to sincerely thank the supporters of IICEC, all academic and sectoral stakeholders contributing to the content, and all of you, our valued participants who are here with us today. And as IICEC, we will continue to offer strategic insight not only into the needs of today, but also to the future energy landscape. So today, following the opening remarks of Ms. Güler Sabancı, we'll hear the presentation of IICEC's Türkiye Energy Efficiency Outlook Report, and immediately after that, IICEC board member Kıvanç Zaimler will moderate a special panel attended by Honorable Minister Alparslan Bayraktar and President of the International Energy Agency, Dr. Fatih Birol, who will provide valuable perspectives. Without further delay, I'm now going to invite Ms. Güler Sabancı, Founding Chair of the Board of Trustees of Sabancı University, to deliver her opening remarks. Welcome. Yes. Honorable Minister of Energy and Natural Resources, Mr. Alparslan Bayraktar, Dr. Fatih Birol, esteemed stakeholders of the energy industry and climate community, valued participants, I would like to welcome you to the Sabancı University Istanbul International Center for Energy and Climate IICEC's conference titled Energy Markets in Turkey and the World, Risks and Opportunities. Today, energy industry plays a key role in enabling economic and social development, and we're witnessing significant developments in this area. In energy security, energy trade, competitiveness, and the critical role of energy in sustainable development, we are also witnessing notable advances. And shortly, we're going to hear about these latest developments, the new dynamics ahead, and a perspective for a more secure, more competitive and sustainable energy future from Dr. Fatih Birol, just like we, as a tradition actually for IICEC conferences for 15 years. So it's going to be a privilege to hear this from Dr. Fatih Birol. I also would like to thank our Honorable Minister of Energy and Natural Resources for joining us today, despite his busy agenda, on behalf of all energy sector representatives and IICEC members. So, distinguished participants, our country, with its national energy strategies, increasing investments and expanding infrastructure and markets, has become actually home to one of Europe's largest and the world's most dynamic energy sectors. Electricity and natural gas consumption, infrastructure, and installed renewable energy capacity are some of the many parameters that Turkey ranks among the top 5 in Europe. And our per capita energy consumption still stands at only half of the OECD average. However, our young population, urbanization, industrialization, and increasing mobility needs are some of the factors that provide a strong foundation, strong ground for continued growth in demand. And in recent years, in energy, as well as in strengthening energy security, increasing energy independence, and achieving net zero emission targets, we see significant steps taken by public and private sectors alike. And energy supply security and competitiveness also play a critical role in our country's economic growth and social development objectives. And Mr. Minister is in a moment going to share with us strategies and priorities regarding Turkey's energy policies, and I would like to thank him in advance for his contributions. Distinguished participants, as you know, since 2020, IICEC has been publishing pioneering energy outlook studies in the industry. And recently, IICEC has undertaken a first-of-its-kind effort in Turkey by developing the Turkey Energy Efficiency Outlook, a study conducted with a participatory approach in collaboration with public, private sector, and academic stakeholders in this field where Turkey holds both high potential and critical opportunities, and where, significant policy steps are being taken. Actually, as Doğan mentioned earlier, one of the things IICEC does best is bringing this tripartite structure together and fostering collective creation. And in a moment, we're going to hear the presentation of this important study.
Esteemed participants, we know it's very important to create values from these corporations. IICEC, with this perspective, is a pioneer model and center. With your contributions, we have leaders of the sector who bring together these organizations, and with the help of corporations, we are supporting more sustainable cooperation models. As I conclude my remarks, I would like to thank the members of the board of IICEC, Alcay Holding, Borusan, BP, Enerjisa, Eren Holding, ING Bank, Sako Energy, Shell, Sokar, and Zorlu Energy. We are very happy for being with us on this journey. IICEC, as always, will continue to work more for a sustainable future, and I hope this will be a very fruitful conference. And my special thanks go to IICEC team and Kıvanç Bey, because they have contributed a lot to this conference, and Dr. Fatih Birol for being with us here in Istanbul while traveling the world. Thank you. I wish a great conference for all of us, and thank you.
Konferansımızın açış konuşmalarını Güler Sabancı gerçekleştirdi.
We would like to thank Ms. Sabancı for delivering the opening remarks for our conference. Now, we are going to hear the Energy Efficiency Report, Outlook Report of IICEC. I'm going to invite Mr. Bora Şekip Güray, IICEC Director.
Sayın katılımcılar, ben de hepinizi saygıyla selamlıyorum. Şimdi bu seneki çalışmamızın bu 5.'si oldu.
This is the fifth edition, actually, fifth of its kind. You know that we have a series of energy outlook in Turkey, which is an important topic. We have discussed the topic of energy efficiency. Of course, this is a report of 260 pages, but within the 15 minutes allocated to me, I'm going to share with you the critical findings as well as some of the concrete results. As Ms. Güler Sabancı mentioned, that success triangle, that trifecta, in order to co-create with them, I'm going to propose 11 recommendations. As I said, this is the fifth of its kind. We started with the energy outlook in Turkey the first time, and with the support and strength we got from Dr. Fatih, we have achieved a holistic structure. So we are able to provide an outlook to the entirety of the value chain. And our approach from then on is to simultaneously contribute to a secure and efficient energy. And these are the areas we wanted to focus on. And of course, you would also imagine that these are renewable energy, electric vehicles, and green hydrogen, which are the factors that will contribute to the transition to zero energy and zero waste. Energy efficiency is a topic that matters a lot for Turkey. We have Mr. Minister here, we have representatives of the authorities. Especially at the beginning of last year, our ministry published 2030 Strategy and Action Plan for the national energy efficiency, which is an important basis for this study, because I'm going to present to you in a moment that we have very strong targets as well as great detail. There are over 60 actions. So this is a highly studied effort, which will actually, this is a policy document, this will guide all of us. What are the things? We looked at what is happening around the world, taking into consideration the latest developments with the support of Dr. Fatih as well as IAE. We have benefited greatly from their studies. We looked into the energy efficiency targets of Turkey. We tried to understand how we could achieve these targets, because actually these are the policy targets that pretty much had our attention. And of course, we wanted to understand how we can contribute to a more secure, efficient energy efficiency. And there are also some concrete indicators and metrics, as always. I'm going to come to them. And then came up with 11 recommendations by IICEC. I want to open a parenthesis here. Over half of the names represented here are with us. I would like to first of all acknowledge them on behalf of IICEC for supporting our work. These are representatives from NGOs, civil society organizations, the public sector, as well as private industry. So our special thanks goes to them for their efforts. There's an innovative side to this study. We always, in general, look at energy specifically within the framework of 4 or 5 sectors to understand which are the highest consumers of energy. Sometimes it can amount up to 5 or 6 sometimes. Buildings, be it public buildings or commercial buildings, as well as households. Then industry, which are quite profound in Turkey. Transportation, railroad, land, as well as marine. There is also the agriculture and petrochemistry, petrochemicals. So for the first time in this study, to the extent of our knowledge, that we have provided greater detail. We wanted to understand the percentage of passenger transportation versus logistics. as well as vehicles. We wanted to understand to what extent our industry is energy intense, for example, cement, glass, iron, steel, and to what extent, which percentage are low energy consumers like IT. So these are the perspectives that we have maintained. And I mean, overall, there were 11 domains. However, 5 of them consumed about 70-75% of Turkey's overall energy consumption. Number 1, buildings. Heating and cooling of the buildings. Number 1. Number 2, land transportation, passengers, mobility needs. Number 3, energy intense industry.
Arz ettiğim sektörler. 4 numara karayolu yük taşımacılığımız. Gene Türkiye'nin geniş yüz ölçümü Doğu Batı
freight transportation on land. You know, we are a corridor between East and the West. We're a logistics hub. And number 5 is lighting and devices and equipment in the buildings, be it electrical, you know, appliances or whatnot. So this is the total, 70-75% of the total consumption. So we wanted to go into a lot of details because they have great potential. Recently, we had the TS 825 standard revised, which will render our buildings more efficient. There's the under the leadership of ministry, we are undergoing LED conversion. So the graph on the right also looks at these 11 domains and tries to understand what type of energy we consume in which domain, because this is not only for efficiency but also fuel substitution or fuel switching, whether or not some of these areas of consumption can switch to other energy resources, for example, electrical mobility, heat pumps. So we try to understand to what extent these can convert, switch from fossil fuel to geothermal, electricity, or other renewable energy. So which are cost competitive, which are cost effective?
Bir de tabii bu işin talep tarafıydı ama iş talepte
bitmiyor. O talebi karşılamak için arıza ihtiyacımız var. Malum ve arıza talep arasında da dönüşüm sektörlerimiz var. Çevrim sektörlerimiz var. Neler bunlar? Elektrik üretimi çok önemli. Rafinerimiz, production, primer kaynakları alıp nihai tüketim fonlarına dönüştüren sektörler. Resources, converting them to, you know, the final
Bakanlığımızın enerji denge
supply. And we also based all of this on the data we received and the statistics we received from the ministry. Another innovative approach I will briefly mention is what we call the decomposition analysis in the academic. So if the demand is increasing, which is pretty much reflecting Turkey's situation, the numbers here are, you know, for illustrative purposes only, but it also reflects the recent years, for example, the last decade of Turkey, Mr. Minister. So this consumption is going to move on with a certain trend. With the decomposition analysis, what we did essentially is that, I mean, there are 3 factors that identify consumption. AIEA also does that. Number 1 is the activity itself. You know, the population increases, the number of buildings increase, the square footage increases, the number of vehicles increase, electric engines, fans, pumps, which boost, you know, the demand. So how do we optimize this? Because if we let it be, the business as usual will not be sustainable for Turkey, as Mr. Minister, you yourself highlight this. So we have 2 trade-off opportunities. One of them is technical efficiency. I mean, yes, we can have an increase in the buildings, but we can render them more efficient. So we can either heat or cool more effectively. For example, we can increase the acclimation, but it can be more efficient. And for example, we can have incentive systems that will replace old vehicles with the new ones. And the other one is fuel switching, which is a matter of thermodynamics. I see you, since this is the energy industry, you know, combustion-related losses can be eliminated if we use direct electricity. For example, a heat pump compared to a boiler will be 3 or 4 times more efficient, for example, or an EV engine compared to internal combustion engine would be at least 3 times more efficient. So this is the net trade-off that you can get. So this was the methodology of the study. I will immediately move on to the results, but before that, as always, we will talk about the scenarios. We worked on two scenarios. One of them is the base scenario, namely the last 2 decades of Turkey's performance pretty much reflects that. But Mr. Minister, in the last 2-3 years, as you would imagine, Turkey has made a lot of progress to increase efficiency, over 6% and 4% respectively in the last 2 years. So this brought us to the top countries among the EU countries. So excluding these last 3 years, the previous years had an average of about 1.6%, and this scenario tells us that our primary energy intensity is improving by 2% each year. So every year we consume less than 2% less energy to manage the same amount of GDP. This is the base scenario. Why is that the case? Because we cannot fully achieve our policy goals. We cannot diversify our investment. We cannot have, due to various reasons, progress a lot in electrification or use renewable heating. And another topic is the consumer behavior in Turkey, especially considering the fact that we import energy. As IICEC, we always recommend that we need to make wiser and smarter use of electricity. So consumer behavior is an area where we don't see a lot of major changes. However, an efficient growth scenario is the exact opposite, where the consumers develop an awareness via the ministry's activities, via the CSO activities and industry's activities, which is also triggered by the market development. So cost-based pricing, tiered pricing would create an awareness, right, among the consumers. So this is one of the differences versus the base scenario. And another one is the investment requirement, which, this scenario is a scenario where we can attract a lot more investment compared to the base scenario and where we make better use of technology. Let's see, by 53, because that is what our net zero target is looking at, so about 30 years, the graph on the left has the decomposition effect that I've mentioned, which is the base scenario. Compared to base scenario, by 2053, the efficient growth scenario will provide a savings of about 50 million TOE. So some of it comes from savings, behavior changes, some from technical efficiency, and another portion from electrification. On the right, you see the development of the final end users' energy demand. So what happens? Turkey is a developing country. The population is growing. We are growing, and of course the activity would have a higher impact compared to others. But switching and the efficiency, maybe it will not fully change it, but it will provide a better or more consumption compared to others by 53, which is normal, but it will be a more rational pathway for all of us. So I will briefly go over the critical indicators. In the second scenario, there is going to be a cumulative 12% savings compared to the base scenario, which translates to about 8 million TOE, Mr. Minister. Let me translate. So, compared to last year, it is 5 times the primary energy supply. So we can save 5 times compared to the base scenario. And where does it come from? To where? In base scenario, it goes down 46%. However, the decrease will be 57% in efficient growth. It may seem comparable, but it's not. I'm going to show you the significant differences. There are a lot more details, but for every year, for every 5 years, and the future outlook is also visible here, there is a comparison between base scenario and efficient growth scenario per sectors and domains, and 11 areas that I've mentioned. Of course, fossil fuel consumption is lower in the second scenario, and electricity and renewable energy consumption is a lot higher than the base scenario. There are some critical indicators. We chose 4 of them to present to you here. Number 1 is per capita energy consumption. It will continue to increase, but in the efficient growth scenario, it will be without compromising comfort, quality, and economic outlook. So these triple factors will not be compromised on. So the GDP contribution will be there, but the per capita energy consumption might decrease. Number two is energy intensity, which is a difference. So today is day 0, or for example 1. In base scenario, it's going to be half, but with the efficient scenario, it's 0.4. More striking one is the import as well as carbon. In carbon, you have the effect of fuel switching. So this 50% decrease will be going down to 30%. So we can decrease by 2/3 with the efficient scenario. And in the primary energy supply, the share of import can decrease a lot more. Under your leadership, Mr. Minister, Turkey's local oil and natural gases also play into it. So the Gabar and other fields, as well as the Black Sea gas, will have a contribution by 2053. So it will be a joint contribution of both this efficient growth as well as local production, which will, maybe this will look ambitious to you, but we can bring it down to 10%, which is about 50% in the base scenario. So in this efficient scenario, if we can improve our production and grow efficiently, we can decrease our dependency down to 10%. And of course, it will have a cost. It's not going to happen for free, but it also has benefits. The benefit will translate into money. Of course, we'll look at the Brent price, gas price, coal price, carbon price, and we will see the savings amount. In the efficient growth scenario, it's $2.1 trillion in 30 years, which is a cumulative savings. An annual mean would be $58 billion. There will be a need for investment, which is $13 billion. This is not only for efficiency, but also the heat pump costs, LED conversion costs, electrical vehicle ownership costs. So all of them, all of the areas and services entailed in this study, the total is this cost. So we see the ratio is 4.5. So if you put 1, the efficient growth scenario will give us 4.5. Based on what we already pay for import, but we can do this by decreasing the carbon exposure. So it is it's a highly cost-effective scenario. To achieve that, there are things we need to do, because we need to take certain things further if we want to achieve these goals. On the left, you see the 3 pillars: energy security, energy independence, and net zero emissions. And energy efficiency sits right in the middle. And on the right, you see 11 recommendations. Some of them are cross-sectional, and others are, in different sectors, and also includes fuels and infrastructure. So let's go over these 11 recommendations very rapidly and then conclude my remarks. Number 1, it always starts with policy. Policy will pave us the way, and in this triangle, this pillar, the policy strategies and roadmaps will have to support the industry. Number 2 is about awareness and information. This understanding, it's consumer behavior, to be more rational in energy consumption, especially in households, in personal cars, to incentivize more efficient energy consumption, which goes hand in hand with the social aspects of energy, fair access, just access to energy, so that we can sustain the development of competitive and efficient energy markets. Number 3, I showed you the $13 billion annual investment requirement. We are not there yet. Based on our calculations, we're still cruising around $7 to $8 billion every year, but we have to increase this by 50%. So we need to find more innovative financing mechanisms and business models, so we can improve collaboration among stakeholders. We cannot improve what we cannot monitor, we cannot measure. Yes, we have large industrialists, but the problem mainly lies with SMEs, so these needs to be disseminated across the country. and advanced data analytics and AI opportunities should be made use of. Of course, the consumers will do that, but in terms of demand management, we need to use these tools more often. The fifth recommendation is specifically targeted towards the buildings, because 1/5 of the energy is spent in cooling or heating these buildings. We need to prepare a comprehensive inventory. We know that there are some efforts to do that, especially for the older ones. Some of the buildings are 30, 40 years old, dating way back in history than the earthquakes, and they're very inefficient, so this can give us 50% of an improvement in efficiency. So such a roadmap and program should be implemented. Recommendation number 6 is about transportation. We have multiple opportunities here. One of them is electric mobility. We can, renew our fleets. We can have other incentives to make our vehicles younger with better fuel consumption, fuel savings. We can have transition among modes. The land use has the proportion of 90% in the overall transportation. The remaining modes of transportation take only 10%. So maybe we can switch towards railroads or, marine transportation. Number 7 is for our industrialists, our industry sector. Our performance in industry in terms of energy efficiency improves constantly, and there are a lot of support by the public sector. These supports and incentives should be maintained in areas of high added value to support innovation and R&D and local production, and also benchmarking studies, as far as I know, is also being conducted in 8 or 10, including glass, cement, iron, steel. So they need to be more common in all other sectors, because these are best practices that can be taken as an example from by other sectors. Recommendation number 8 is about fuel substitution, clean electrification, specifically wind, solar, and other renewable energies, and nuclear energy, as well as geothermal and solar, because Turkey is one of the richest countries in terms of these resources. Wind is always there, but these are direct heat sources, actually, solar and geothermal. So we need to take a rapid and solid steps towards achieving fuel substitution, especially imported ones. Number 9 is about heating and cooling. Heating demand is about 50% of the energy demand. So either to cool ourselves or to heat ourselves. So there are preparations going on in terms of setting up a heating market, and we are supporting that. And waste heat pump applications should be functional so that the heat will be maintained and will not just go into the atmosphere. Recommendation number 10 is a bit structural. These are under the auspices of the ministry, as well as our other public authorities. This is a more structural one, because our industry is energy intense. Our transportation industry is road intense. So this requires a lot of collaboration. This will take time. It's not going to happen over time, but transition here will help decrease energy intensity both in the industry and in transportation. So, for example, public transportation, sustainable agriculture, farm to fork, more energy efficient and macro areas should also be looked at in terms of efficiency. And at the very end, as I've said at the beginning, in the last 2-3 years, Turkey has broken a lot of records in terms of improving the performance in primary energy. So we need to maintain that to make Turkey a global leader in energy efficiency with its policies and strategies. And this study, we believe, will contribute, we hope, will contribute to achieving these targets in Turkey. As I conclude my remarks, I would like to thank all of our stakeholders, our experts, our leaders who supported us. I want to also thank IICEC board for being there with us, for giving us this vision. I also specifically want to thank Dr. Fatih for guiding us. Thank you very much. You see a QR code on the screen. You can scan it to see the website where the study is. You can download the entire study, and there's also the executive summary of about 20 pages. You can also download the slide set I've just presented to you. And if you want more information, you can visit our website. Thank you very much once again for your attention, and I hope this will contribute to the efficient growth of Turkey. Thank you.
Evet, bu çok güzel sunum için teşekkür ediyoruz.
Thank you for this great presentation. Now we will continue with our special panel, and our moderator will be Kıvanç Zaimler, and we'll have Dr. Fatih Birol, Director of International Energy Agency, and our esteemed Minister of Energy and Natural Resources.
Panelin hemen ardından bir fotoğraf çekimimiz olacak.
Following the panel, we will have photo shoot. This is a great hall, so we will kindly ask our participants to pay attention to the noise for the panel.
Evet, ben de hepinizi saygıyla selamlıyorum.
I would like to greet all of you with respect. This is 18th IICEC conference, and I am very pleased to be with you. And we have two important guests today. Our esteemed Minister, Alparslan Bayraktar, and one of the most influential names, Fatih Birol. Welcome. And you're all familiar with the transition of energy, energy independency, and clean energy. So we are redefining energy, redesigning energy. Our minister is very determined, and he's doing a lot of important things, so he'll be shedding light to the recent developments. And Dr. Fatih Birol will inform us about the updates globally. So we will first start with global perspective, then we will talk about Turkey, then we will talk about technology, financing, and demand. So this is my offered outline. As Doğan Bey said, as IICEC and with other NGOs, we held a lot of events in this hall, and you can hear everything in this hall, so even a very small talk can be heard. So we will kindly ask you to put your phones on silent mode. Before we start with global perspective, Mr. Bora talked about the energy outlook, so can you shortly give your perspective? Thank you very much. These conferences have become traditional now, but this time format is different. Kıvanç Bey thought he could challenge us more in this panel format. I hope it will be an interactive session, and Fatih Bey always adds a lot of insight. This is the first time I'm seeing the report and all of the recommendations, all of these articles you listed. These are very important for the second phase of our strategic action plan for 2050, and they're very promising because there is great potential for Turkey, and it's a multilateral thing because When we talk about energy transition, we need to consider housing, agriculture, industry, and all of these recommendations he shared with us are going to contribute a lot for our work. So it's a very precious study, and energy efficiency is not number one, but actually the initial, like the zero priority for us. And we have to strengthen energy infrastructure, and we are acting with a very comprehensive energy transition plan, and energy efficiency is a very critical domain for us. And the last 3 years, we have been very successful to reduce our energy intensity, and all economic actors are very motivated to do so. And of course, we will increase our efforts to change our behavior. Of course, price, the right price, is the most important factor here, and we have to communicate with consumers, and we should even add this to our education policies so that we can start talking about this at early ages. And I think this report is very useful. We contributed. We will continue to work with you. Thank you very much, esteemed Minister. And I also added your note on agriculture as member of IICEC. Fatih Bey, you brought this concept of outlook, and we've done a lot of Türkiye energy outlook work. So what would you like to say? Because Bora thanked you, gave you reference. Bora, I congratulate you and your friends. First of all, I want to congratulate him because he became a father. Congratulations and thank you. I want to thank Ms. Güler. I live abroad, and Ms. Güler said one of the most important, she's one of the pioneers, and she's left a great legacy. I want to thank you as a Turkish citizen, and you're a great figure. You've been a great figure in Turkey, in Europe, and globally. So I want to thank you a lot for everything you've done, and you've left a great legacy. Thank you. So this was my second note. Third thing, about energy efficiency. 2.5 years ago, there was COP28 in UAE. It was one of the historical summits following Paris, and we had 2 recommendations for the well-being of the world. We said tripling energy decrease, and we were surprised to see that 200 countries committed to it. 2.5 years later, renewable energy, we're not doing bad in terms of tripling renewable energy. It's almost 2.7 7 now. It's almost 3. But about energy efficiency, the world fully failed. And instead of accelerating twice, they reduced their speed 2 times. So countries committed to do it 4%, but in the last 2 years it's only 1%. It's unfortunately very bad. There are many reasons for that. Why energy efficiency is important? It's not about climate only, and we always say, countries, of course, have to foster their industries. Countries, first of all, need to have energy potential like oil, natural gas, and others. There are many countries, they are very abundant in oil and natural gas, but they're not industrialized. They only their economies rely on their revenues. And some countries like Japan and Korea, they've grown and they are industrialized due to their energy resources. So energy efficiency helps the countries to foster their economies. And in Turkey we have wind power, solar power, and we generate energy from oil and natural gas. But if we want to contribute to Turkish economy, we need to use energy in a more efficient way. So IICEC's work is very valuable. And let me underline one thing, not only in Turkey, it's one of the most important topics in International Energy Agency, and we've trained more than 3,000 people. Countries know that energy is very important, and many of them are preparing or drafting laws and regulations. But the main point is that these regulations are not fully implemented, they're not monitored, and penalties are not enough. So these are not deterrent. So having the regulations and laws is not enough. They have to be implemented. So this is very important. It's great to see the importance of it. It's great to have the laws and regulations, but once we have them, they have to be implemented, and those who don't comply with the rules, they have to get penalties. Thank you very much. I'll start with the global perspective. When we invited our esteemed minister, and I kindly asked him what would be the topics you want, and he said, you can ask me anything, I can answer all of your questions. So I'm not here to challenge you, and you're very active in international platforms, and you're very high-level meetings. Almost every week you have talked to different heads of states and ministers. So in this perspective, for all stakeholders, what do you think about being successful in this energy transition? First of all, it's very important to talk about energy transition today because the world is going through important changes in trade, in finance. We know that countries, especially with the new American government, with Trump's second presidency, climate or energy transition is not one of the top agenda items. And I stated that many times before, I want to say energy transition should not be a trend topic. I said that energy transition and smart energy transition. I always say that it should be smart energy transition because energy transition is not limited to climate change or global efforts, because when it's limited to this, then it lacks some of the goals, because now we're not talking about fossil fuels. All organizations, international organizations have left fossil fuels aside and in the past, and now they're only talking about coal and other fossil fuels because the U.S. is an important consumer of these fuel resources. So the smart energy transition, we've always said that the smart energy transition should be flexible and should be compatible and should go in line with digitalization and technology. And this process of energy transition should be sensitive to the market. And we also said that the the policies should be sustainable, should be consistent, should be determined. But today we have the opposite. In some international meetings, I said that until 2030, the next 3-5 years are very critical for fighting against climate change. If we're targeting carbon neutral economy until 2050, then these years are very vital. It started in 2015 and it was accelerated by Paris Climate Summit and stopped, and the motivation increased, but now fossil fuels are back, at least in the political discourse. And we have investors from the business world, we have representatives of different organizations. So what was the signal we gave to the market? Everyone is confused. Where should you invest in? We have the same backbone, and Fatih Bey gave the numbers, and investment in renewable energy is increasing. Low carbon investments are still there, but we need very good policies to support our acts. And we can say that as Turkey in energy transition, as I said, and as we heard it in Bora's presentation, there are 3 goals. First one is supply security. This is a priority in a competitive trend, of course, and we want to for energy, and we want to reduce energy dependency. And our president has set the climate target for 2030. And we need renewable energy while reducing our energy dependency. And we have to use our energy in an efficient way in all areas. We're investing in upstream, like fossil fuels, but we see natural gas as a transition fuel, and natural gas will continue to be there in our energy transition roadmap. It will decrease its import, but we're investing, and Turkey has a very ambitious program for nuclear power, and this will definitely contribute to reduce our carbon emissions. So this is a very comprehensive series of policies, and Turkey's energy transition journey is continuing. And we know that 3-5 years ago we had our concerns, and the smart energy transition will cover all of these in the future. Thank you very much, esteemed Minister.
As we were preparing before the meeting, they asked me what a headline would be following this meeting. I said I didn't know, but I think smart energy transition is a front runner. So if we have anything new, I can also mention that. So as a representative of an investment group, well, you talked about mixed messages, but if you allow me, maybe we can take a look into them in the coming days. I will move on with Dr. Fatih. I think it would be best to ask the following. I took a look at what your recent statements were. I think we were together at Davos. Before that, it was Cesarik and then COP. So I always, cross paths with you, likewise with Mr. Minister. Last year, as the International Energy Agency, you've talked about records were broken in renewables, but I'm mostly curious about the place of oil and natural gas within the context of renewables. That is question number one. So let me ask all of the questions and you can pick and choose the ones you want to answer first. The second question is nuclear, because we're talking about a security of supply, renewables, and with the Prime Minister of Japan, you visited the largest nuclear facility of the world, which is the Kashiwazaki plant, which had quite a message about nuclear. On top of that, this was also posed to Mr. Minister as well. This global south, there are inequalities in transition. So would you like to elaborate on these injustices? Okay, thank you. First of all, Mr. Minister is right. Well, let me put it this way. About climate change, the trend, the political tendencies are against climate currently. However, we see the impact of climate change more severely every day. So there is a contradiction between the two. But the politics in the real world, it's truly against climate, because this enthusiasm, unfortunately, tapered down, not only in politicians and industrialists as well, which is exactly the opposite of what is happening with the climate change. Number two, you've talked about transition, Mr. Kıvanç. I think it's important to clarify something. It is important for our industrialists to understand the current situation. Currently, I will give you some figures about transition. The main driver of the main cause, the main driver actually are not the concerns for climate change. They are the policies on economy and industry. I'll give you three figures. Number one, in 2024, 85% of newly installed facilities, plants, are renewable. Solar, wind, 5% nuclear, and 10% coal and natural gas. Number two, within the same context, 4 years ago, 5 out of every 100 cars sold was EV, but this year, 25, 1/4 of every car sold in the world is electric. Number three, and the last one, energy is the most, in energy, the most important technology are the batteries. And there is a tremendous advancement there. The prices are going dramatically down. So when you look at all three, the main reason, driver of growth between solar and wind is not climate. In Turkey, there is a tremendous growth, 10 gigawatts. Turkey is actually is ranking right behind Germany in Europe, and we also manufacture solar panels, which is extremely important. So the main driver is not the climate change. The costs are decreasing and it is quick to install. Number two is electric vehicles. The main driver of electric vehicles, like 6 out of 10, are in China. And in China currently, the electric vehicles are cheaper than IC, and electricity is cheaper than oil, fuel, because they're not thinking about saving the world, they're thinking about their economy. Batteries, pretty much the same. Currently, as a result of the industrial policies, we understand that the industry of the future will rely on these new technologies. So people are trying to keep up, to maintain position, to be ready. These are the main drivers. Yes, if the climate change sensitivity was, or awareness was at a level, at the desired level, this would have been faster. But climate policies or such developments in these countries, I see a lot of development, albeit some hindrances might occur. Europe and China and many countries are going to be taking rapid steps towards this. Let's talk about oil and natural gas. Mr. Kıvanç, 4 months ago, we had another meeting. You would remember Mr. Mehmet Şimşek joined us back then. And as I said there, I said, I anticipate oil prices will remain reasonable this year, which is good news to us. And I said that in 2024, which is important, in 2024 we said that the demand growth for oil will slow down, like it will grow less than 1 million barrels. And people were curious, is there a concern? Why is IAE seeing this? But we said, no, these are the numbers. And truly, we finished 2024, we're in 2025 now, and the demand is for the first time below 1 million barrels. And the reason is very simple. China. In the last decade, over 60% of the demand was from China, 40% from the rest of the world. However, the Chinese economy is slowing down because they're using electric vehicles and the demand is decreasing. So seeing the data is extremely important. At the agency, I always tell my colleagues, data always wins. Sometimes it might take time, but you will win, right? Data always wins, just like we'll always have May. And oil and natural gas will be with us through the years. We will use them. But the age of electricity is upon us. Many things are electrified, including vehicles, artificial intelligence. As Bora mentioned, currently, #1 driver of electricity demand is climatization, air conditioners. So it is such a vicious cycle, which is, we're in such a loop that we, for example, in China, in India, people, because of the very hot weather, use AC. When they use it, their energy demand increases, and to meet that energy demand, they use coal and natural gas, which leads to hot weather, climate change. So it is a tremendous vicious cycle, and we need to break that cycle. Otherwise, things will go south. So, as I said, oil and natural gas will be with us for a long time, but we have renewables and nuclear. You're right. 2 weeks ago, I was in Japan because majority of Japan's power is generated via nuclear. Not only the Prime Minister, but also the Minister of Energy and the Foreign Affairs were there. All they think about is how they can link nuclear back in the system because they don't have oil, they don't have natural gas. And I'll tell you this. Japan, or set aside Japan, there is significant transition to nuclear around the world. Countries who said categorically no to nuclear are now considering it. Those who said yes, their number is increasing. In 2025, world's nuclear energy generation will reach a historic peak. For the first time, we will see that peak. The reason, as I've said, Europe, China, the US, India, China, they are boosting nuclear. So in Türkiye, we are finally transitioning to nuclear. Hopefully in a very short time we will be generating electricity from the nuclear, but we need to have more than one plant. Renewables will not cover it. Renewables are important, yes, but we need to have nuclear to support that so that we can have security of supply, security of electricity. To sum up, yes, renewables are extremely important for the future. We'll see very significant technological advancements, including small nuclear reactors, electric vehicles. I've been saying this for the last couple of years. We will see more electric vehicles on the roads, and nuclear will be an important part of this. And security of supply, as well as the cost and price, will be of utmost importance. So you've underlined two of the trifecta. I'll give you two numbers, show you how unjust the situation is. Africa is it's not much talked about. 1 out of every 2 individuals does not have electricity. 50% do not have electricity in Africa. Number 2, solar is cheap, right? And the 40% of the overall solar potential is in Africa, in solar energy. However, in Africa, the solar energy generated, or the energy from solar plants, is lower than that of Belgium's. I mean, think about the globe. Think about where Africa is, where 1.6 billion people live, and you have Belgium. I'm sure, I hope the ambassador is not here. It is a very reputable but small country. And think about how less the solar power is. I mean, it's it's an extreme injustice. It makes you sad, but as you said, there is an inequality, which is a huge gap between developed and developing countries in terms of energy, and it trickles down to many other things, many other problems. Yeah, we'll get to that, but the oil, natural gas, and nuclear plants in Turkey, I'm curious about them. But before we move on, I will focus on the global perspective and ask Mr. Minister the following. In developing countries, we always talk about the young population, the potential, the growth, the increase in GDP, always this renewable potential highlighted. We also highlight these topics. So, what are some of the properties that will bring Turkey at the forefront, right, from a global perspective in terms of attracting foreign investment? So, in Turkey, especially, our energy story, our narrative in the last 20 years, actually what makes us stand out. So Turkey's energy policies have seen a tremendous transformation. So there's chapter 1 of our energy transition, which contained very bold and very brave reforms, where Turkey restructured its energy sector. The government, the state was a player. From a vertical integrated structure, we moved on to a more competitive landscape under the leadership of Sabancı Group, Ms. Güler Sabancı as well. We've seen a lot of contribution from 30,000 megawatts to 116,000 megawatts. This was thanks to private investments. And the regulations, the legal infrastructure, Turkey very successfully closed the chapter of Energy Transition 1.0. So This helped us in our journey towards carbon neutrality by 2050. So we have this very strong market now. All of these steps, and this is one of the differences actually that makes us stand out. Our privatization decisions, the implementation, these are not easy. It requires a very strong political will. It requires a very strong support from the society. In terms of global transition, Mr. Fatih is right, but there's something else. At the end of the day, people want to have cheaper electricity without any blackouts. So energy transition is losing speed because of the, for example, US elections, because people want cheaper electricity, lower inflation, so it is imperative that people believe in this narrative, because, I mean, you cannot tell them that it is too expensive today, but don't worry, in 2053 it's going to be carbon neutral. Politics will not allow you to do that. You need to have a different approach. So what makes us stand out is the strong market model that we established, and we have a comprehensive and integrated policy approach. We're not saying yes to this, no to that. As I've said, we need renewables at the very highest level in Türkiye. Critical mines, minerals. We haven't talked about the minerals. Numbers are important because such a major transition needs to be supported with the raw materials, the supply chain. I mean, we need to bring them up to that desired level. Do we have that? These are the questions to be asked. So let me conclude by saying our energy transition narrative is a long-winded journey without leaving anything behind. Yes, there are areas that required some revamping and changing because there are a lot of dynamic changes. The cost of money is increased in the world. So this is the economic environment we try to attract the right investment to Türkiye. There are also the trade policy wars going on. In 2016-2017, we had the IICEC model, and they said, we don't need that, let's import it. But now the countries are resorting to more conservative policies, trying to generate their own energy. As Mr. Fatih said, we can produce solar panels and turbines and towers. So this is the structure that we're basing our activities on. The policies devised in those days were part of this integrated and holistic approach. Thank you. As I was listening to you, I also would add Türkiye's strategic location actually as a strength. So we are in the position of a hub basically, and I'll go back to that in the next round. But as we move on to the Türkiye's perspective, as we come from the global to Türkiye, yes, the global trends are now against the climate change efforts, and we need a smart transition. Do we call this 2.0? I don't know. Maybe you can find the name for that, Mr. Minister. So 2035, 2053 targets are very clear for Türkiye, and you specifically launched a renewable energy roadmap for 2035, which has 16 titles, not only renewable energy, but also security of supply, decreasing dependency, net zero. So these three pillars have sub-objectives, but the most important one, 120 gigawatts of renewables, which was the headlines in the newspapers. Let's start there. The investment, the financing, and the entire complexity, including supply chain. What are some of the challenges you envisage? What should we focus on to achieve this target? Let me briefly remind you of what it is, because our purpose, I don't know if you would remember this, but years ago, when we were discussing these energy and mining policies, you asked to what extent these policies will be maintained, or whether or not they will be amended every 3-5 years. And we devise these policies as the long-term energy policies of Turkey. Hopefully those coming after us would follow as well, because energy is an area where you need long-term policies. And within those policies, we assert that Turkey has an amazing renewable potential. It helps everything, the emissions, it helps with lowering dependencies. So it will be a panacea for many issues. So our president announced this at COP, but before that we organized a launch and we addressed the private sector, saying that these are the roadmap and the targets for next decade. But it was not a target from going from 30,000 megawatts to 120 in solar and wind. We also identified the new energy architecture of Turkey. We also talked about the new electricity or energy backbone of Turkey, which was a holistic investment plan. The figure I uttered that day was also about transmission, but we also should talk about distribution, because we're talking about a distribution of an investment of $28 billion by 2035 to successfully integrate that electricity into the grid. This does not include the distribution, just the transmission. If you add distribution, the numbers will hike even further. So this is an ongoing program. Last year, we had a new installed capacity of 6,500 megawatts of solar and wind. So in the world, renewable ratio is about 70, but in Turkey, 98, 99%. I'm talking about the renewables share in new investments. And as we set those targets, we said that this needs to go up to 8,000 megawatts. And I believe in 2025, we will achieve that. IICEC models will be updated through working with international financing institutions. We will achieve these targets, and we've set forth financing methods, and your group helped us. We allocated a capacity of 2,000 megawatts. So we try to move forward as predictably as possible. We want to set this market, establish this market to be as predictable as possible. I think this is the greatest gap in today's world, because we are going through very unforeseeable times. So we want to eliminate these uncertainties to achieve the targets we have for 2035 and beyond. Hopefully, we will achieve these targets, and maybe we will talk about oil and natural gas afterwards. So before we move on, I will ask Mr. Fatih. We see that the national energy and mining policy, as Mr. Minister said, it is a long-term policy, and there are energy efficiency action plans. So the policy documents available today have this consistency, this integration with one another. And these plans are supported by the industry, the academy, with a shared mind. But the challenge is sometimes with the implementation. From your point of view, because as International Energy Agency, Turkey is one of your members. So how do you see Turkey, both in terms of our plans, but please set aside your hat as a Turkish person and look from the outside, because I see you in some of the meetings. You talked about there will always be May, but Mr. Fatih always uttered these stuff in the international arena, and we're always proud to have a Turkish person like yourself. But please wear your Parisian hat.
Both Turkish and a Galatasaray fan. Now, in our agency, one of the requirements for being a member is to pass these criteria. Every 5 years, we review their status. And many of my friends are now in Ankara. They are working together with esteemed ministers' colleagues, and they will prepare a report, and we will review Turkey's situation. I think Turkey has taken very important steps in terms of renewable energy, especially in solar and wind, and more potential, including hydroelectricity, including geothermal. And as I've been saying for years, I saw some of the photos, and I think nuclear power is indispensable for Turkey. And energy supply security is very important. And with recent developments, the world is going towards a very dangerous point, and energy security will become even more important. In London, in 2 weeks, esteemed minister will participate with UK government. We're going to hold an international energy security summit. There will be more than 60 countries. Christopher Norini will be there. I will be there as the president of IEA, because energy security is everyone's problem. And Turkey has done a lot for this issue, and I think they're very positive. We will see how prices will go, and some good news for Turkey, as I said in December, for oil and gas prices, for international prices, there will be a soft term. I said that in December, and the global economic situation in December was at a more stable level. But now, in the world, we can expect a decrease in demand for oil and gas. And in December, I said trade wars might start, but it has started now. And we will see the repercussions on the global economy, and we will see its implications on energy. But my prediction, my forecast would be these $80 of oil prices will go even lower. And for Turkey, a big part of our current deficit is about oil and gas import. And in natural gas, beginning of 2026 and 2025, there will be a lot of LNG in the market from US, Qatar, Canada, and this will change the natural gas markets. Now, the market, I mean, the sellers are stronger in the market, but the buyers will be in a stronger position. So, Turkey will have time to strengthen its economy, to control inflation the coming 2-3 years. So this time should be used well. And prices being lower is one of the biggest successes of energy efficiency, because when the prices are low, people use more energy. I mean, they're less careful with energy. I'll go to Antalya to attend Antalya Diplomacy Forum, and for COP31, Turkey wants to become a candidate country for hosting COP31. And as far as I know, they're discussing climate law in the assembly. So we're looking forward to see the results. And I'm also looking forward to hear the results of Ankara meetings. I was going to ask oil and natural gas, but Fatih Bey said about energy efficiency, prices being lower, being subsidized. So let me ask you a fast question here, a short question. It's on the agenda, like subsidies for energy prices, purchasing power, affordability. What's your take on that? I know what you're getting at. Energy efficiency, and I talked about the impact of price on behavior. In Turkey, starting from the pandemic, there is a huge support program for electricity and natural gas. And this program, this incentive program, should not discriminate anyone in the society, and we started to work on that, and now there's 5,000 kilowatt-hour power consuming users are now excluded. Like 1.2 million subscribers are now using this, and 97% of population, both for natural gas and electricity, with the latest changes, the support program was 50%. And in our households, so the power in our houses are paid by the state, almost 60%, and this is a requirement of social justice. We want to have lower income families, and we are going to change this into a model like direct subsidies, and only for these groups, for energy, for power and natural gas. We're working on this project, and one pillar of this is inflation. And if you're going to make electricity prices cost-based, then you need to consider inflation. In economic management, both central bank and with our Ministry of Finance and Treasury, with budgeting teams, we're working together, and it's a very fine-tuning work. And we have to add inflation into this equation, and we have to make this sustainable for the sector, and our citizens are expecting services and investment from us. And demand has increased in Turkey. Electricity was only used for lighting, but now we have electric vehicles, so there are different uses, and we need to increase the infrastructure, and there is a huge need for distribution network. We have to invest there, and we have to take the necessary steps in downstream. Now I will take you to upstream. Oil, natural gas. In Sakarya, in Gabar fields, so you're motivated. And this will decrease our dependence, and this will increase our security, energy security. And you said our target is 20,000 megawatts, conventionals and SMRs, and this gives us supply security and climate. So what's your perspective on that? For oil and natural gas, after 2006, Turkey changed its strategy, and 92% of oil is imported from other countries, and almost all of natural gas, and demand was still increasing, so the gap was growing. And let me give you 2022 numbers. Oil and oil derivatives now, the import volume is $39 billion. This is 2022, right? Yes, this was the time when prices were at peak levels. So we paid $80 billion for oil and natural gas. Of course, it's not 8 today, and we're still importing a lot of oil and natural gas. Turkey, with this huge volume of import. As long as we have the big budget deficit, current deficit, we're fragile. And we said in upstream, we're going to have a new vision, new strategy. And one of the strategic steps, I'll give you the three main ones. One, Turkey will look for offshore resources from a different perspective, with its fleet will search, will conduct a very comprehensive search. In 2003 and later in the Black Sea, we did very comprehensive drilling work, and BP, Exxon, and the others, other global companies did this. And of course, their motivation is different from ours. And we said in 2016, we have our fleet, one of the most modern ones. We have 4 deep drilling, 2 seismic drillers, and we started to do our searches in the Mediterranean and in the Black Sea. So in a very short time for our sector, in Sakarya, in the field, we found the biggest natural gas, and this was right in the middle of the pandemic. And we were wearing masks when we were in the vessel, and the prices were going down. All oil and natural gas companies were either canceling or postponing their investments. So we are very happy to see that our strategy was right. We said, even though we're right in the middle of the pandemic, we have the budget to carry out this mission, and we started to see the results now. 4 or 5 years. This is a very short time in upstream business. This is like overnight, and we had this discovery, and we started to produce it, and 8.8 million cubic meters of natural gas, and 3.8 million users are now using this, and it will go up to 9.5 million cubic meters, and the first phase will be complete next year. We will double it, and Turkey will generate 7.5 million cubic meters of natural gas, and this is like 50 times of the total natural gas in the times of Republic. So this was the first phase of the strategy, so there is a need to do more, and we are working on it. Second pillar, we wanted to go everywhere in Turkey. We wanted to be present. Drilling in this last year is more than the drilling in the US, and there were different obstacles in the past, because in different parts of Turkey there were terrorist activities, and now we went to Gabar, which was there for 50 million years, and once we cleaned those areas from terror, and in 2010 we found oil, 80,000 barrels of oil in 1 year. So daily production was 36,000. Only Gabar produces 80,000 barrels of oil, and we will announce as we have more. Third pillar of our strategy, very recently we've taken a step for that. Turkey should have its unconventional program. We had a few attempts in the last years, and in Diyarbakır, in 4 fields, we will have a new partnership for unconventional production, and as Turkish oil. You mean by unconventional? Rock gas. Fracking method. And IEA, golden age of gas. So this is the technology which made the USA the biggest oil country. We believe that in the coming 3, 5, even 10 years, Turkey will become an incredible game changer. And we're entering that term in the Thracian part, in the Thracian region, in the southeastern part of Turkey. We will start seeing the results of our strategy. In oil and natural gas, we're going to prove that that belief in the past that there is no oil and gas in Turkey. So hopefully this third pillar will work as the first two, and we're going to be talking about totally different things. And as Fatih Bey said, we don't have to lower the prices because our production, and maybe we'll start exporting. So maybe it will be good. I hope Minister of Finance will not hear this. And he also said Pakistan and Somalia, they don't have, I mean, Turkey doesn't have to find these in our water, in our waters. Total is not producing in France, and as far as I know, is not producing natural gas in France. And they're producing in all parts of the world, so we don't have to do it. We can go to Libya, Iraq, or different parts, like in Pakistan, in Turkish Petroleum offshore. There are 3 Pakistani companies, and a new search is about to start. And yesterday, Indonesian president was here. They invited us to Indonesia. So we will have operational skills in different parts of the world. We see now, we see a country which is active in different areas. And we need the infrastructure, natural gas infrastructure, international projects, and gas potentials, interconnections. So it's going to have an integrated and comprehensive policy. And for nuclear, I mean, before we talk about nuclear, he talked about CEVEC. This was one of the biggest meetings. And Turkish Oil Association was very active there, and I'm proud to see that as a Turkish citizen. National Oil Company, it's almost that now. Okay, now let's talk about nuclear.
In nuclear, I mean, Turkey since 1950s, for the past 70 years, had efforts to go nuclear, but hopefully we will do that. In Akkuyu, we have 4 reactors currently under construction. The first one has reached about 95% completion, so we will generate the first electricity there, and by the end of 2028, we want to commission 4 reactors in total. But Turkey will have 20,000 megawatts of installed capacity by 2050, and in order to achieve that, in Sinop there will be 4, in Trace region there will be 4, and at least 5 gigawatts of small modular reactors. So our efforts continue, both regarding the conventional large-scale plants. Korea, Canada, China, and Russia has great interest in these plants, but small modular reactors, be it American companies, including Rolls-Royce, we are also closely negotiating with them, and there must be some good developments in the near future. And I should once again say the private sector is interested in this area. Mr. Fatih, I'll turn to you now, but in the World Economic Forum in Davos, you were a trendsetter there. Following your statements, I mean, I said a lot of what you said. I said invest in copper, and all of my friends are buying copper. You'll ask me why, because all of this electrification, all of this transition, you've talked about energy, minerals, materials, and they are all hand in hand now. So not only copper, of course, all other critical minerals, including lithium. You have a very broad perspective, and there's a lot of concentration. It's not about owning the mineral. Also, the countries where minerals are processed will be an area of concentration. And then I will turn to Mr. Minister and ask him about the critical mines and minerals required in our transition. Yes, the world's energy transition is happening whether we like it or not, because the main reason is the world's transition to novel technologies and countries investing in different technologies, including China, India, the US, and others. These technologies, differently from the old ones, need not oil and gas, but other things, which we call critical minerals. For example, lithium, copper, cobalt, or palladium. So these are available in many parts of the world. These minerals, I mean. So they had a huge value spike all of a sudden. And if something like that happens in the market, it means that the transition is not happening in theory, but also in practice. I work with leading mineral companies, many of them. In the US, in the UK, they used to be coal miners, and they slowly, or rapidly I should say, transitioned to critical minerals, the ones I've listed before. Now, I highlight copper because electricity generation is growing very rapidly in the world. Number one, AC, the second one is EVs, and number three is AI. These three really, brought the electricity generation to a significant place. In the next 5 years, now, number one, it will grow to the extent of the existing size of the US and Europe. So that is going to be the overall energy demand. So there will be a huge demand, but the electricity demand will grow 6 times higher than that. Electricity means copper. All of these insulation or isolation and transformation lines need copper. Electric vehicles need lithium. So there's a lot of interest in these. China, years ago, people were, uncertain about China, but China made agreements with many African and Latin America countries and, made a lot of headway in critical minerals. On top of that, most of us know this, which is more important, regardless of where it is manufactured or mined, they need to be processed somewhere. Crude oil is useless. It needs to go to a refinery to be converted into diesel or LPG. So you need to process that. China holds 80% of the refineries of these critical mines, minerals, on its own. So what we want has nothing to do with China. I always defend diversification. That is why it can be either Turkey, Canada, Australia, US, India is working very hard on this, and other countries need to take steps so that we will have security of supply in the world. This is going to be one of the hot topics in the summit in London I've mentioned, to diversify this. In Davos, I said that because, Mr. Kıvanç, by 2030, the investment in copper and the demand will be very significant. There is a tremendous gap. So even if you start mining copper, you can yield the results in 17 years. So it's not happening over time. So copper prices in the last couple of months, increased dramatically. So we need to be careful about this. Security of supply will not necessarily mean oil and gas anymore. It will also entail the security of these, the supply of these, critical minerals. Your predictions come true generally. Mr. Minister, these critical minerals are also important for Turkey. These critical minerals are complementary to this transition. Our targets for the renewables also puts forward a great need for industry. I mean, the new IICEC requires some conditions to be met. But if you go further, there is a significant need in terms of the minerals. So in terms of critical minerals or strategic minerals in general in Turkey, we actually see the new era will be the era for the mines. But some global trend we observe, which I also alluded to in the Minerals Forum in Pakistan, is the following. Last year, we were talking about this phenomenon of California gold rush in the past century. The new century will be the rush for the critical minerals. So all of these, geopolitical steps and moves made, these debates and discussions today has in the background the concerns for these minerals and access, attempts. So this new era will also mean significant targets for Turkey because we have a significant reserve. Refining them, converting them into the end products, into more valuable end products will be the most important thing. Turkey is open to international partnerships, and we are also taking steps. But, for example, rare soil elements in Eskişehir or the copper mines of Turkey, last year, we announced strategic and critical minerals of Turkey, which includes, copper, cobalt, and other minerals. So they need to be explored and used. In Turkey, I know that you are very careful with the wording you use, so thank you for that. It's great to have these targets, but in terms of implementing, you talked about some challenges. The permits or other problems on the ground, I think, are the ones you're alluding to. In the Parliament, we currently are discussing the climate law, but we will also discuss renewable energy and mines. You can call it super permits, which facilitate the permits. It's going to be a reform package, and hopefully in the coming days, our Parliament will take this into their agenda, and I believe that if this becomes a law in May, this reform pack will accelerate the activities in minerals and mines and also permits for solar and wind. So our investors will have the opportunity to act faster and we can reach those 120,000 megawatts. I will continue from where Dr. Fatih left off. I mean, our great targets regarding the grid. So on one hand, for the success of this energy transition, we need a very intense collective effort and we need a significant interconnectedness. Last week in Baku, Southern Gas Corridor includes Azerbaijan, Georgia, Turkey and Bulgaria, which is the new Green Energy Corridor agreement undersigned by these parties. So the Caspian Sea or the Caucasus and beyond will be affected. So resources in these geographies will arrive in Turkey towards Europe. So it's a very large expansion of the transmission lines, but they will be supported. They need to be supported with minerals and raw materials. But this new age will be the rush for critical mines. I think this will be a headline somewhere. I will talk about AI and the demand, but you don't plan on stopping this panel at all, do you? Well, we have a few minutes. We will not keep you any longer. Are you bored? I don't know if anybody is bored. Last two questions. Let's have a big round of applause.
Anlayışınıza sığındım.
Thank you for your understanding.
Siz her zaman
Mr.
bize o
Minister,
iletişim imkanını, o açıklığı tanıdınız.
you're
Çok teşekkür
always
ediyorum.
open to
Benim
us. Thank you very
esasında
much for
o
being so
planlardaki
accessible.
Zorluklardan bahsettiğim biraz bu işin
The
finansmanı, hem
challenges I've
stratejik hem finansman,
mentioned have to do with
finansal
the
yatırımcı.
strategy, with the
Yani benim ayrıca
financing.
çabalarımı da
I
biliyorsunuz.
mean, you
Ülkeye
know my efforts
uluslararası
as well
yatırımcının gelmesi, stratejik
to
yatırımcı gelmesi.
attract
Yani biraz
strategic
açıkçası
investors
finansman
from
boyutundan
abroad. So
o
I was
zorlukları
merely
bahsetmiştim. Bir şey eklemek
alluding to the
isterseniz
financial challenges.
ekleyebilirsiniz.
Would you like to add anything?
Ben şeye geçmek istiyorum.
But
International
let
Energy
me move
Agency'nin
on to the
Energy and
International
AI diye bir raporu
Energy
var.
Agency. You
Orada
have an energy
daha
and AI
büyüdüğünü,
report,
özellikle data center, buna bağlı
which
data center
talks
ihtiyaçlarını,
about the
şehirlerin
growth in
civarında
AI,
olduğunu
requirement for data
ve
centers that
%10
are
talebin
around
buradan geleceği
cities and
gibi
10%
başlıklar da
of the
vardı.
demand
Hem
will
fiziksel
arise
zorluklar,
from
siber
these.
riskler var.
So
Bir de
there are physical
esasında
challenges and
AI'ın
cyber risks,
enerji
but there's
dönüşümü
also
içinde akıllı bir şekilde kullanılması. Yani
AI
bir yandan
smart
çözümün
use
parçası,
is
bir yandan da
possible for
problemi
smart
büyütüyor.
energy. So
Bir özetlersem
both
sizin orada yorumunuzu
adds
almak
to the
isterim.
problem, but also can be part of the solution. Yesterday, a very important report on AI was published by IICEC, which is it's a first in the world, actually. AI, until a couple of years ago, was an academic topic, but now it's $1 trillion worth of an industry. However, in order for AI to work, you need energy, because a data center is required for AI to function. So a mid-sized data center consumes energy equal to a city of 100,000 households, and they are popping up everywhere like mushrooms. Right now, India has one of the largest data centers in Gujarat. So they are consuming the electricity, as I've said, of millions of houses. In the US, in the next 5 years, half of the energy consumption will be by data centers. So it is a major problem to meet this demand. How do you meet that? You need renewables, you need natural gas, and small modular nuclear reactors. Because these tech companies, since they have high credit rating, they can find investments and finances, and they agreed with small modular reactors, which will lead to these small modular reactors be an agent in the economy very fast. So there's this burden of AI, right? There's this burden on electricity of the AI. Countries with electricity who generate electricity cheaper are going to be one step ahead on drawing technology, right? America, the US, China, France. So these are the countries with cheaper electricity. This AI, you know it better than I do, AI will facilitate many topics and can transform many things in economy, in society, in even defense industry. There's also the other aspect of AI and energy relations. AI can make things easier. For example, grids, communication grids. There is a grid problem around the world. It's a huge problem. I've just talked about this, that there are many in the market of renewables. 700 gigawatts was the addition around the world, but 1,500 gigawatts of renewable energy are ready, but they cannot connect because grids are not ready for it. So let's say you have the plant, but grid is not there. Renewable energy and other forms of energy have difficulties in connecting to the grids, but AI can make the use of grids more efficient and more rational. Therefore, the requirement for grids will be optimized. So this is going to have a tremendous impact. This will decrease the grid needs significantly because the existing ones will be used in a more optimized fashion thanks to the AI. One more thing, AI, there are many energy technologies growing and maturing right now, and it will speed up this process, including battery technologies I've mentioned. And once they are advanced and they become affordable, renewable energy will take flight, because the greatest issue we face with renewables, as we were discussing outside, is that they are very much interrupted. But if you join solar plus battery, and if the batteries are affordable thanks to the AI, then the renewables will, as I've said, take flight. Before I move on, there was something striking. 3 years ago, if we had this COP panel, we would have discussed hydrogen 8 or 10 times, but so far we've never alluded to hydrogen. Do you have anything to say about hydrogen? If we were in Germany, we would have discussed this a couple of times. Kıvanç, if you want us to, we can, but there was one question about that. Well, at the end of the day, everything we talk about boils down to comes down to how economic the prices are, how competitive and sustainable they are. People are talking about the renewables, but we have today IICEC tenders, $2.25 per kilowatt hour will be the tariff for the next 20 years. And your group is also included in the wind, and we've talked about 3.5 cents. In any conventional plant, this will not be the price you will see. So especially, I think your question is about green hydrogen, mainly. It will be the same. The more competitive that is, the more it will find its place in the market. Maybe that's why we're not discussing it that much. It's not that competitive. As you said, we need them all, actually. Okay. Any last words before we close? About hydrogen? No, not about the hydrogen, but I closed that topic. I got my message.
Bana da dediler fotoğraf çekmek için son birkaç dakikam var. O yüzden son sözleri ver. Benim bu sormayı unuttum veyahut da sizin özellikle vermek istediğiniz mesaj var mı diye.
Anything
En son kapanışı Sayın
you want
Bakanımız
to
yaparız.
say, because we will give the floor to Mr. Minister to close.
Yani dünya belki enerjinin ötesinde bir şey.
Maybe beyond the energy, I should say that the world's economy,
gelişmelere bağlı olarak son derece
in line with the current developments,
belirsizliklerin olduğu bir
is
dönemde.
facing a lot of uncertainties. And
Benim önerim
my recommendation
dönemi değil, orta ve uzun
is
dönemdeki
to not plan for the short term, but plan for medium and long term and decide accordingly.
Herhalde bizi muazzam bir volatilite
I
bekliyor.
think we are going to be facing extreme volatility in energy markets and economic markets. So I think we need to be prepared.
Çok teşekkür ederim.
Thank you.
Smart Energy Transition dediniz.
Smart,
Bunun küresel
you've talked about smart energy
Ben bunu Türkiye için
transition
anlıyorum.
globally and for Turkey as well.
Söylemek istediğiniz son.
Any last words, Mr. Minister? Let me conclude by saying the following.
Küresel belirsizliklerin bu kadar yoğun olduğu bir ortamda
In times of such global uncertainty,
yani artarak devam etmesi gereken süreçte tabii
and in a time where we need to increase our energy investment, I would say access to financing and attracting financing to Turkey would be our primary focus in the coming days. And we believe in the strength and dynamism of Turkey's private sector, and we are in great collaboration with them. Capacity allocation tenders was a work of collaborative effort to make this model as bankable as possible. So, yes, there are many geopolitical risks facing us, but there might be changes overnight. But beyond that, something we haven't discussed in detail today was financing, and attracting financing would be, as I've said, the primary focus for us, because cost of capital has increased significantly. And we also do not want any losses, any lost costs, or so we want to have this balanced energy policy that is multi-tiered, multi-parties. So it's going to be one of the pivotal areas we'll focus on. Last but not least, in addition to all of our endeavors in the future, we are going to see national champions from the public sector, but we also want to have international players as well. So starting with your group, I should say there are good examples and best practices, and seeing that Turkey's energy sector can invest internationally would be a great success for us. So as public sector, we believe we will be collaborating in the future with more pragmatic and creative solutions, so that Turkey will be a more effective player globally, regionally, in this domain. Thank you very much for your attention.
Buyurun Fatih Bey. Pardon.
Go ahead, Dr. Fatih. I forgot to say something. I would like to thank Güler Sabancı, and I wish you all the success, Mr. Hayri.
Ben de bütün katılımcılar
I
adına,
also would
IICEC
like
adına,
to thank
şahsım adına her ikinize de çok teşekkür ediyorum.
Everyone, to our
Kıymetli
panelists,
vizyonunuzu,
on
görüşlerinizi
my
bizlerle
behalf and on behalf
paylaştığınız
of our
için
organization,
son bir
for
alkışla
sharing
tekrar
these
Sayın Bakanım
these
Fatih Bey.
valuable remarks. And thank you, Mr. Minister, once again.